Today we are going to continue our journey, our interesting journey through the course of normal physiology. And we are going to begin to focus on the nervous system and to its components at a microscopic level, as well as the physiology, not so much where things are and what they look like, but really how they work and how all of this system gets integrated. The nervous system is a very complex organ system. In Peter Kramer's book, Listening to Prozac, a pharmaceutical researcher is quoted as saying, "If the human brain were simple enough for us to understand, we would be too simple to understand it." That quote is from the early 90s. In several decades since, progress has continued at an amazing rate within the scientific disciplines of neuroscience. It is an interesting conundrum to consider that the complexity of the nervous system may be too complex for it. That is for us to completely unravel. But our current level of understanding is probably nowhere close to that limit. One easy way to begin to understand the structure of the nervous system is to start with the large divisions and work through to a more in-depth understanding. In other chapters, the finer details of the nervous system will be explained, but first looking at an overview of the system will allow you to begin to understand how its parts work together. The focus of this chapter is on nervous neural tissue, both its structure and its function as well. Our first question is divisions of the nervous system. The nervous system can be divided into two major regions, the central and peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system, CNS, is the brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, PNS, is everything else. The cranial, spinal nerves, etc. The brain is contained within the cranial cavity of the skull, and the spinal cord is contained within the vertebral cavity of the vertebral column. It's a bit of an oversimplification to say that the CNS is what is inside these two cavities and the peripheral nervous system is outside of them. But that's one way to start to think about it. And actually, there are some elements of the peripheral nervous system that are within the cranial or vertebral cavities. The peripheral nervous system is so named because it's it's on the periphery, meaning beyond the brain and spinal cord. Depending on different aspects of the nervous system, the dividing line between central and peripheral is not necessarily universal. Functions, general major functions of the nervous system. First, nervous impulses travel in two directions, and each direction has a separate set of nerves. First is an efferent or descending nerves send impulses away from the brain. These are also called motor nerves. And the sensory impulses that ascend the nerves to the brain are called afferent impulses and move along afferent nerves. Efferent impulses produce action in distant organ, but afferent impulses deliver information from peripheral nerves to the brain. The integrative function analyzes information input from afferent impulses, files these data, and stimulates action in response to sensory input. Kinds of nervous tissue and their functions. First is neurons, very significant parts, general, major parts of nervous system. Neurons are nerve cells. They initiate and relay electrical nervous impulses toward and away from the brain. Neurons have three basic parts: the cell body, dendrites or trees, which receive incoming messages, and axons, which deliver outgoing messages. Neurons vary in their function. They can be sensory, motor, or integrative neurons. Neurons vary in size and shape and in the number of axons and dendrites that they may have. Due to structural differences, neurons can be classified into three major groups. First group is bipolar neurons that have one axon and one dendrite. Unipolar neurons with one axon and small dendrite, and multipolar neurons that have one axon and many dendrites. Sensory neurons. Sensory neurons, they are afferent and they carry impulse to central nervous system. Second are interneurons. They link neurons as known as association neurons. They located in central nervous system. And motor neurons. Motor neurons are multipolar neurons and they carry impulses away from CNS to periphery. Carry impulses to effector organs. So nerves can have any arrangement of dendrites and axons, including one input to many outputs. Divergence. Many inputs to one output. Convergence. And one input to one output. Some axons are myelinated or insulated for rapid impulse delivery. These axons display saltatory, jumping conduction. Other axons are unmyelinated, and what's myelin? Myelin sheets develop as a baby growth. Disease can interrupt this process. Myelin sheets consist of Schwann cells, fat cells. There are different types of cells in nervous system. Neuroglia or nerve glue. They are connective. Neuroglia are connective nerves that hold the structure of the nervous system together. These cells nurture the neurons. They are much more numerous than the neurons and are regenerated over time. Sorry. Because they can regenerate, their stem cells, not the neurons, are the source of most cancerous cells in brain cancer, is said. So there are different types of these cells. First are microglia. They are located in CNS, and they are phagocytic cell. Then astrocytes, located also in CNS, scar tissue, mop up excess ions, etc. Induce synapse formation, connect neurons to blood vessels. They are all microglia cells. Second type of cells are oligodendrocytes. They are located in central nervous system. They are myelinated cell, located also in ependyma or ependymal cells, ciliated and line central canal of spinal cord, line ventricles of brain. These were neuroglia cells. Our next question is reflexes. Reflexes are rapid, automatic, unlearned motor response to a stimulus. It usually removes or opposes the original stimulus. Monosynaptic reflexes, first type of reflexes. For example, the stretch reflex, which responds to muscle spindles. Spindles is the simplest with only one synapse. Only one synapse, monosynaptic reflex. The best known stretch reflex is probably the knee jack reflex. You know it. It's simple reflex. Right in a reflex arc. Stimulus activates a sensory receptor. Sensory receptor is the first part of reflex arc. In action potential travels down an afferent sensory neuron and bring information to the central nervous system. Information processing occurs with the interneuron. An action potential travels down an efferent neuron. And then last part of the reflex arc is the effector organ. Effector organ responds to a stimuli. So first part of reflex arc is a receptor. Second, afferent neuron and afferent nerve. Next, central nervous system or center of this reflex. Fourth part is motor neuron or efferent neuron and effector organ. Complex reflex, polysynaptic reflex with at least one interneuron, one or two or thousand interneurons, are slower than monosynaptic reflexes but can activate more than one effector. Withdrawal reflexes, like the flexor reflex, move a body part away from the stimulation, like touching a hot stove. Reciprocal inhibition blocks the flexor's antagonists to ensure that flexion is in no way interfered with. So our next question is the synapse. Synapse is a very significant, very crucial part of the nervous system. Synapse is a junction between a neuron and another cell, nervous cell, neuron, or muscle cell, or secretory tissue cell. Occurs because of chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. Communication happens in one direction only. Between a neuron and another cell type is a neuroeffector junction, such as the neuromuscular junction or neuroglandular junction. The neurotransmitter acetylcholine is a general neurotransmitter in the nervous system. It activates cholinergic synapses in 4 steps. Remember, please, 4 steps of activating cholinergic synapses. First, action potential arrives at the axon terminal. Acetylcholine is released from vesicles that located in the presynaptic membrane and diffuses across synaptic cleft between presynaptic and postsynaptic membrane. Acetylcholine binds to receptors and triggers depolarization of the postsynaptic membrane. Acetylcholine then is removed by acetylcholine esterase. There are other important neurotransmitters except acetylcholine. For example, norepinephrine, or as we know, it's adrenaline or norepinephrine in the brain and located in the brain, and part of the autonomic nervous system is found in adrenergic synapses. Dopamine and serotonin are CNS neurotransmitters, at least 50 less understood neurotransmitters. For example, NO and CO are gases that act as neurotransmitters, as mediators. There are excitatory and inhibitory synapses. Usually, acetylcholine and norepinephrine trigger depolarization. They are excitatory transmitters in excitatory response with the potential of reaching threshold. Usually, dopamine and serotonin trigger hyperpolarization. They are inhibitory transmitters and inhibitory response, making it farther from threshold. Okay, thank you. That's it. Welcome to my next lecture next week. Bye. Good luck.